the thing is, when the 12 per conference thing was introduced, I think there was like 12. There's like 23 teams in the NBA, so there's legitimately more players in the league now, and there's a lot more talent, like you said. I think just because of inflation of talent in the NBA, I think it might be something that they have to consider adding 1 or 2 spots to it.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fratsketball podcast. I'm your host, Matt, and this is my co-host, Kieran. Today, what we got going on for you guys is we got just recent coverage of the Rockets and Grizzlies, and then just some other stuff, little things that have happened here and there around the league, such as Steven Adams trade and just a couple other things. All right, and then as always, kind of weekly little wheel spin. We'll see what teams that we're going to be watching for this next week. And first up here is going to be Kieran's team.
All right, let's go. You've been getting some bad luck with teams, so I hope I don't catch on to that.
You got the Clippers.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah. All
let's
right.
go.
Here's mine. I got the Bucks, but I'm not going to do that just because you already covered the Bucks.
Yeah, let's not do that.
So we'll see.
You almost got a good one there.
No, I mean, bro, I got the Pistons. I'm not doing that. I'm sorry. I'm spinning.
No, you have to.
I'm not watching the Pistons,
to be fair, my team's the last 2 weeks, my teams have not won a game. The Grizzlies went 0-4, and
dog. I have watched the Blazers, the Hawks, the Rockets. I just spun it again and got the Nuggets. Let me get 1 week, man. 1 week.
All right, so this is your one respin. Okay, so I also now get one respin.
Yes, I will take the Nuggets. Anything is better than the Pistons. I will gladly.
You're just delaying the inevitable. You're gonna get the Pistons later.
I know. Next wheel spin next week. It's gonna happen, isn't it? No, it's just gonna happen now.
I would bet on that. I would bet money on that.
Damn near. I'm taking the over 0.5 on the Pistons wheel spin for Matty B next week. All right. So kind of to start today's episode out, like I said earlier, he watched the Grizzlies last week, and I ended up watching the Rockets this week. So if you want to get it started, we can start it off with the Grizzlies and just kind of how their week was.
Yeah, the Grizzlies, so a lot of injuries. They lost all 4 of their games this week. I actually had a lot of hope coming into this because they had won 3 games in a row before this week, but some notable players that have missed all or most of the games. So Ja Morant, obviously, out for the rest of the season. Steven Adams has not played this season. Victor Oladipo has not played this season. Just got traded there. Brandon Clark has not played. Desmond Bane has been injured this whole stretch. Marcus Smart has been injured this whole stretch. Derrick Rose just played his first game out of these 4, and same thing with Luke Kennard. So a ton of injuries. It's basically, just to give you an idea of what's going on in Memphis right now, it's Jaren Jackson Jr. and 4 other guys that you probably have never heard of. That's maybe a little bit of a stretch. But yeah, it's the not only like the backup guys, but like the backup guys, and then also like some G Leaguers. So there's been some bright spots. There's definitely been some bright spots. There's not really been a big blowout, actually, surprisingly. The Warriors did just beat us by 20, but it really was a lot closer the rest of the game. They kind of just went on a run at the end. So the first game, Sunday the 28th at Pacers, a loss, 110-116. It was a competitive game all the way throughout. Tyrese Halliburton and TJ McConnell were missing, so Andrew Nembhard had to carry the load, and he did quite a good job. Vince Williams, throughout this whole stretch, has been great. He had 20 and 8 on 8 of 12 shooting. Scottie Pippen Jr. has been playing solid. He has some impressive highlights, but overall not shooting super efficiently, but playing some good defense. The Grizz could not stop Siakam from getting into the paint. He had 19 on 8 of 13 shooting. Benedict Mathurin hit a ton of just really tough shots and just stuff in the paint as well. The Grizzlies not really a great defensive team when they don't have like 5 of their best defenders out on the floor. And also Jaren is stretched very thin when he's playing huge minutes, and especially when he's carrying an enormous offensive load. So he is scoring also not very efficiently. He never hit 50% shooting from the field in any of these 4 games. And Jalen Smith played him very well in this game. Jalen hit a big 3 for the Pacers down the stretch. Triple J had 25 on 7 of 17 shooting, but he did get to the line quite a bit, got 11 of 12 for the line. And then GG Jackson poured at 18. So on Monday versus the Kings, another loss by 9 points, 94 to 103. Domantas Sabonis, just to show you how bad of a rebounding team the Grizzlies are, uh, he grabbed 26 rebounds. So he had a 20-26 game for his 28th straight double-double. Sorry.
Jeez.
And the Grizzlies just not really getting on that glass very much. The Grizzlies were actually up 15 after the first quarter. It looked promising, but they shot a putrid 38% from the field. But they attempted 18 more free throws, so that's how they were able to stay in the game. Jackson had another inefficient game, 22 on 6 of 18 shooting. Really, really bad shooting night, especially when most of his shots were actually attempted in the paint. He really only attempts layups, short floaters, or threes. Matt Hurt, good scoring.
Okay,
spark off the bench.
pause. Who?
Matt Hurt is averaging 25 points per game in the G League. He's a G League superstar, okay? But he's actually contributing pretty solidly in the scoring department, at least.
Dude,
So,
I know the most random players in the NBA, and that is a name that I have never heard. Matt Hurt. That one's stuck in the memory bank for eternity now.
Yeah, I will never forget the name Matt Hurt. He was putting the hurt on the Kings when he was in So Thursday the 1st of this month against the Cavs, another loss by 7 points, 101 to 108. Donovan Mitchell had a great game against a pretty subpar Grizzlies defense. He had 25, 4, and 7 on 10 of 19 shooting. Garland returns. Not an incredible game. He has only 9 points and 7 assists on 40% shooting. Max Strus, Dean Wade, and Jared Allen get it done on both ends. They played some good defense and scored a couple of points. Jackson has this is going to be a theme, another inefficient scoring game, but defended the paint quite well, had a steal and 3 blocks. Still a great defender, even when he's having to do a lot of offense. So this is probably a good learning experience for him for when he has to be on the floor without Ja, without, Brandon Clark, without their better scoring options. Vince Williams and Santi Aldama score well, 12 to 22 from the field. Another game where the Grizzlies could have won down the stretch as they led by as much as 11. And then this game just finished Friday the 2nd. The Warriors, they took an L by 20 points, 101 to 121. Derrick Rose and Luke Kennard came back, and Derrick Rose had a good minutes at the point guard spot, and Luke Kennard hit a couple threes. Jacob Gilyard, he is, I think, the shortest player in the NBA, maybe the second shortest. He's 5'8", but he played great defense on Stephen Curry and scored a career-high 16 points. Played a lot of minutes. And the story for the Warriors this game was actually not Steph Curry. He only had, I think, 20 points or so. Brandon Podziemski had 14 assists. He had 12 points, 7 rebounds, and just had an incredible game. Really played a lot more point guard. And I have Wiggins in here, but it should be Kuminga was dominant. He had 29 points on 11-15 from the field and 6 for 7 from the line. David Roddy,
Kuminga
getting to the rim. He's had at least 10 points or 10 rebounds in these last couple games. And then I don't want to have to say it again, but Jaren Jackson, good defense, bad offense. Vince Williams stands out again on both ends. He's been one of the brighter spots, in my opinion. He's been playing great defense, scoring consistently 15, 20 points a game, and he's doing it quite efficiently. So analysis for this stretch. Triple J is leaning into more of an offensive role this time, with Bane and Ja out could lead to him being a more capable on-ball guy when needed. He's aggressive attacking the paint and isn't shying away from his new role. However, fouling and rebounding are still major issues for him. He's only had three double-digit rebound games this year as the center for the Grizzlies, and is the second least rebounds per game for a center, right behind Brook Lopez. And then also, he is second in the league for fouls per game behind his former teammate Dylan Brooks. Scottie Pippen could be a good role player. Same thing with Vince Williams. These are some guys that we're kind of seeing their kind of sparks off the bench, and I guess also in this as starters now that their teammates are injured. So some encouraging things, but it's also hard to win games when half of your roster is on the injury report. So going forward, this is clearly a gap year for the Grizzlies. Their playoff hopes are nearly non-existent. If they make the playoffs, I would be extremely surprised.
Right.
And decisions on whether to trade Marcus Smart should be made quickly. He might not be the best fit on this team, but the future overall looks bright in Memphis, even though I just went on a rant about how bad this stretch was.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the Grizzlies, yeah, they're definitely I don't think many people saw this type of year coming for them. Like obviously you've had the theme, it's just been injury plagued all year long. You've had I think they've had the most starting lineups, the most
Yes.
just
Yes,
yeah.
they have.
It's just been a mess this year. But yeah, what the whole Marcus Smart thing, I just want to comment on that real quick. I think the breakout of Desmond Bain, like not I shouldn't say breakout this year because that happened a couple years back, but Desmond Bain has only continued to get better and better and better. And I feel like he just continues to surpass critics, what people think how he's going to play. And I feel like, yeah, I don't think Memphis necessarily needs a Marcus Smart. When the deal was done, I liked the move, but I definitely think that Marcus Smart has a lot of value in this league, and I definitely think Memphis could get some good assets. So I think that Marcus Smart needs to be gone before the deadline.
That's also my opinion. There's a lot of teams that could use him. One of them being my Milwaukee Bucks. And this is just an opportunity for me to point out for you your signed Damian Lillard jersey right behind you. That's a great piece. So
Yes,
take
sir,
a look at
man.
that, guys.
Little cop that a
And
little few days ago.
if you're listening on Spotify, that's not a great plug.
Yeah.
But yeah, Marcus Smart can definitely fill in for some defensive issues that Milwaukee has in the
Yeah.
backcourt. So the
Yes, yes.
Rockets, how they doing?
Absolutely. So yeah, Houston Rockets this week. They had 3 games. They went 2-1. First game they played the Lakers. Gonna keep it a buck. Definitely had to recap on some highlights that game. I passed out, but big thing that game is Jalen Green. He had a career high. He ended up with 12 boards and 7 dimes. Him and Sengun actually both did. Also, Jalen Green ended up having 34 points, and Sengun also had 31. So very, very efficient night from both of those, and it looked like a lethal dynamic duo against the Lakers. Uh, Dylan Brooks came in. He had a very efficient 17. Cam Whitmore is a name that you're going to hear a lot over these next few minutes. He had 20 points in 18 minutes of play. Jabari Smith, he had 18 points, and Fred Van Vliet, he's been struggling a little bit recently. Been having a little bit of stuff with some injury, but he had 14 assists. Just great at passing the ball. Yeah, kind of what I realized with this game is the Rockets got a steal with Cam Whitmore at pick 20 in the draft. That man is a certified
Oh yeah.
bucket getter. I was on the train that Cam Whitmore was going to get taken fourth by the Rockets. So when they picked Amen Thompson, I was super shocked. And then to continue just to see Cam Whitmore fall and fall and fall. And there was speculation on why he fell. And I don't remember what the whole thing was because people were saying, oh, like he had some undiagnosed injury or like whatever, whatever. But Cam Whitmore was coming out saying that's all BS and whatnot. But either way, Cam Whitmore fell all the way to 20 and still ended up going to Houston just way later. And Houston got so much value out of that pick. And I think Cam Whitmore is going to be a great player in this league. Moving on to the next game, Pelicans and Rockets, they ended up losing to the Pelicans 110-99. Jalen Green was on fire in the first quarter. Cam Whitmore, he shot the ball super well in the first and second quarter. Um, Something that I noticed a lot this week is I haven't followed a lot of Alperen Şengün a lot this year, so I wasn't like necessarily too familiar with them. Like obviously I've heard all this stuff. Oh, he's playing like a baby Jokic type of thing, and like just like your basics and stuff. And I knew all that, but Jonas Valanciunas gave this man a problem for a whole 48 minutes that night. He got bullied. Şengün was probably on the floor once every like 3 times down the court. Like it was bad. But yeah, Rockets just they had a poor first half shooting the ball outside of Cam Whitmore. Cam Whitmore made 3 threes in the first half, and if I remember correctly, the Rockets made 5 or 6 threes in total in the first half. But anyways, super bright spot from that game though. Jalen Green looked super confident. Had 20 points in the first half and looked super explosive. Was using his athleticism well, was getting to the rim, was taking smart shots. And yeah, I was definitely super impressed. Cam Whitmore and Jalen Green had 33 of the Rockets' 54 first half points. Şengün was borderline a non-factor, like I said, was just getting bullied by Valanciunas on both ends of the floor. Four out of the five Pelican starters were in double figures to end the first half, so wasn't necessarily one player that you could just pinpoint that was torching the Rockets. It was just a good team effort by the Pelicans in the first half. Um, and like I said, just back onto Jalen Green real quick. If Jalen Green can start to figure out how to use his body and get to the lane more and get calls, and if Jalen Green could become like a 7, 8 free throws a game type of guy, I think Jalen Green, his ceiling is it sky's the limit, man. He's definitely starting to put it together slowly but surely. Especially over these last 2 weeks. Jalen Green's just taking that big jump, so that is definitely a good thing if you are a fan of the Houston Rockets. Um, didn't really cover a ton of the second half, but it was a 20-point game. It shrank down to 14. Lead would go to 25. Yeah, and then today's game, Raptors versus the Rockets. Rockets pounded the Raptors into the ground, won 135 to 106. Jabari Smith shot the ball super well in the first quarter. Jayshawn Tate was back. He was out those last 2 games. I forgot to mention that. Fred VanVleet had a crazy fadeaway to end the first quarter and beat the buzzer. So that was super dope to watch. Cam Whitmore. That man is electric. That man is a certified bucket getter. I think that Cam Whitmore is going to be great. I think that the Rockets I think that he's going to be a cornerstone of that franchise. I think that he's going to be another guy alongside of Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün that you try to build around. I know he's young and I know we have a small sample size, but just for all the stuff that I heard about Cam Whitmore, the criticisms, the highs and lows in his game, he's exceeded it in everything that I've seen. So I think the Rockets have a possible future star on their hands. 66-47 at half. Şengün, super efficient half. He had 11 points, 8 boards, and 5 dimes. Amen Thompson had a super good game. He was leading the Rockets at half. He had 12 points. And then all in all, kind of just sum up the game. Şengün had a great game. Rockets, like I already said, Rockets just absolutely pounded the Raptors into the ground. Scotty Barnes had a good game tonight, but all in all, the Raptors just didn't have a good game. So just some other stuff that I kind of compiled about the Raptors about the Rockets this week. Jalen Green,
same first letter.
Yeah. Jalen Green definitely has taken a jump. Jalen Green over his last 4 games has averaged 30 points per game, 8.8 rebounds, 4 assists, and almost 2 steals a game. So those are borderline MVP type of numbers right there. And obviously that's only a 4-game stretch. But I think with this small sample size, it's definitely a good glimpse into the future of what Jalen Green could be and what we were all hoping Jalen Green would be earlier in his career. But I'm very glad to see Jalen Green finally playing up to expectation. I was super big on him coming into the draft, and yeah, this man's starting to play with all the confidence in the world. So I think if he gets the right pieces around him, and I think if he continues to develop at this rate and play at the rate that he is, I think the Rockets could be a very good team in the future. I think they have a super bright future ahead of them. Something else that I kind of took note of, Amen Thompson has given me a lot of Ben Simmons vibes. Obviously, Ben Simmons had one of the most productive rookie seasons in NBA history. And I'm not comparing like stats and stuff like that, but just overall, like how they both play the game of basketball. Amen, obviously a lot more raw than Ben Simmons was. Amen's coming out of overtime elite. First draft class that is eligible. And we're still figuring out stuff with overtime elite. So Obviously a little bit more of a raw prospect, but defense for Amen Thompson is just miles ahead of where it should be. Very similar to Ben Simmons when he came in the league. They both see the floor and they both have a very high basketball IQ. They both rebound the ball amazing, and they both struggle to shoot the ball. Obviously, Amen Thompson is a better shooter than Ben Simmons. Not necessarily much competition there, but same thing. Amen's definitely struggling with the jumper a little bit. So, yeah, I think that the Rockets may have landed a pick right there too. So I think if the Rockets could hit on both of their first round picks, that would definitely be huge for them. Just considering where their franchise has been at for these last how many years post James Harden, post Chris Paul, after playing the Warriors in the conference finals, how many years being so close to the finals. I think the Rockets finally have a spark, and I think they're finally headed in the right direction. And the last thing that I kind of have to cover, so before Cam Whitmore started to get a bunch of minutes, Tari Eason was playing, and Tari Eason has been out. He's been dealing with some stuff with his leg, and he's just now going to be coming back, and he's going to be on and off injury management. So the Rockets have a big decision to make. And what do you do with Cam Whitmore? Because right now, Cam Whitmore is one of those players that's kind of on the bubble. Just kind of depending on how the game goes, depending on the situation, Cam Whitmore will give you 30 minutes a night, or Cam Whitmore is going to give you 18 minutes a night. So, with another forward coming back into the lineup with Tari Eason, what do you do with Cam Whitmore? Just because Tari Eason is a second-year player and Tari Eason is good. Tari Eason was producing before he got hurt, but obviously you only have so many spots. You can only play so many players throughout the game, and yeah. But it definitely puts the Rockets in a tough spot. But maybe this is just a little bit of recency bias, but I just don't understand how the Rockets could move on from Cam Whitmore. I don't like that man's just a bucket getter. In his last four, he's averaged 20 points a game, almost he's 6.5 boards and 0.8 assists. That man is a bucket getter. He goes out there and he scores. That's all he does. 3-and-D, bucket after bucket. Super high flyer. Kind of reminds me of like a Miles Bridges type of player. Just for a little comparison for you there. So if I were the Houston Rockets, I would definitely try to experiment a little bit. I would put out lineups with Cam Whitmore, put out lineups with Tari Eason, and just kind of get a feel for what's best. Like maybe you can incorporate both of them, and I don't know who's not, like maybe move on from Jayshawn Tate. Like I don't know. There's a bunch of possibilities, but definitely some answers that are going to need to be figured out in Houston. So that's kind of my all-around summary for the Rockets for this week.
A lot of good things to say about some young Rockets players, Cam Whitmore, you know, Jalen Green. So it looks like a bright future maybe in Houston as well.
Indeed, indeed.
Awesome, very cool. So just earlier today, the All-Star reserves were announced, and there's snubs, as there are every year. I don't know if there's ever been a All-Star year where there's not been snubs. There's always going to be someone that people argue. And one thing I want to say before we get into this is, do you think that the NBA should add more All-Star spots? If so, how should they do
that? It's definitely a tough one because, the league is just the talent is better than it's ever been. There's so many players that are deserving of another All-Star spot because like this year you had like a Trae Young who missed out, who, some people argued should have been a starter. You know what I'm saying? Like, obviously, you're always going to have like that one player that stands out. But personally, from my standpoint, I think the NBA should keep it where it is. I personally think it would make credibility making an all-star team just slightly less, just because, you have an extra spot. That's 2 or 4 extra players, just, depending on how many spots you add into that. So I personally think that where it's at is good. I wouldn't like to see any adjustments. The NBA has one of the best all-star formats, all-star weekend. I think it's obviously better than the NFL's. You got them playing dodgeball and stuff like that now, and MLB has a good one. But all in all, I think the NBA's got it right with how they do their all-star weekend, and I wouldn't change anything up.
I think I actually might disagree with you on that. I do agree with you that it's been good for a long time. And the All-Star Weekend, besides, I'd say maybe the dunk contest has been pretty entertaining for a while. And that has there's been you know, the best players in the league are not participating in that. Like John Morant is never going to do it. LeBron James obviously never did it, and most likely never will still. But the thing is, when the 12 per conference thing was introduced, I think there was like 12. There's like 23 teams in the NBA or something like that. There was a lot less teams, so
Yes.
there's legitimately more players in the league now. There's a lot more talent, like you said, and I think there's just a lot of players that we'd like to see play in the All Star game. And I know it's if you have 15 players on each roster, not everyone's going to play.
Yeah.
But I think just because of inflation of talent in the NBA, I think it might be something that they have to consider adding 1 or 2 spots to it. And it's not like a thing with all NBA where if you make the team that it like changes your contract, like you are not eligible for a supermax if you don't make the All-Star game. It's kind of just like you said, like a resume thing.
Yeah.
But I have also some issues with that, like with the fan vote being such a big thing. Julius Randle making his 3rd All-Star team is going to be like in 20 years, people are going to look back like Julius Randle made 6 All-Star teams. He must have been awesome. And it's like
He played in
he
New
was
York.
he was good, but he
Yeah.
wasn't like 6 All-Star teams good. So let's get into that. The East All-Stars reserves. So Jalen Brunson, New York went absolutely crazy when they figured out that Damian Lillard made the starters over him. So
Oh, yeah.
this is his first selection. Jalen Brown is 3rd. Bam Adebayo, his 3rd selection. Paolo Banchero, his 1st. Donovan Mitchell's 5th selection. And Julius Randle's 3rd selection. In the West, we have Steph Curry making his 10th. Anthony Davis making his 9th. Anthony Edwards making his 2nd. Paul George making his 9th. Kawhi Leonard making his 6th. And Karl Towns making his 4th. So no first-year All-Stars in the West, but 2 in the East. Who are your top 3 snubs?
My top 3 snubs. I've been on this since a couple weeks ago. Trae Young definitely on the top of that board for me. Trae Young, I think borderline like you can't really throw on. By the way, for the East, somebody we did forget to mention, Tyrese Maxey. Forgot to mention him in the East. You're all good. Just wanted to throw that out there. Tyrese Maxey, another first-year selection. But yeah, it's definitely tough, but all the point guards in the East, Damian Lillard, Jalen Brunson, Tyrese Maxey, and Trae Young, I think they are all playing at such Tyrese Halliburton too. What am I saying? They're all playing at such an elite level right now, and I don't think you can necessarily just pick out who your number 1 is, or your number 2 is, I should say, because I think Hallie has been the best this year, but I don't think you can go and just pick a number 2, to be honest, because I could see your opinion if you argue Trae Young. I could see if you argue Donovan Mitchell. I could see if you argue Damian Lillard or even Tyrese Maxey. But Trae Young, definitely the top snubs on my list. I think it's tough because I don't know who he would replace, but I think De'Aaron Fox was a snub this year. That's definitely a tough one. And then for my 3rd snub, I'm gonna have to go probably with James Harden, just because James Harden's been having a good year. He's the reason that the Clippers are doing what they're doing, why they're winning. But then again, it's just kind of I don't know who I would take him over, because I think Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker and even Paul George, like that's maybe what I could argue is James Harden instead of Paul George. But individually, I think all those other players are having individual better seasons than the players that I just named, for the West at least. But yeah.
Yeah, Trae Young is definitely either at or near the top of the list for me. And I think he actually has had a better season so far than Tyrese Maxey, so I might slot him in there. And then whoever the extra whatever spot was, the wild card spot, positionless.
Yeah.
Paolo Banchero, I don't think deserved to make it this year. I think it was a lot of hype. That might be a hot take, but I think even a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, arguably the 2nd best player on the Celtics in this first stretch of the season, you might be able to argue Derek White. You definitely can't, I don't think, argue Jaylen Brown as the 2nd best player on that team. I also don't think that he should have made that. Scotty Barnes having a great season, so I think I'm going to go Derek White. Sorry, not Derek White. I'm going to go Kristaps Porzingis instead of Paolo Banchero. I'm going to go Trae Young maybe instead of Tyrese Maxey. And then I got to go Rudy Gobert. I think that his teammate, Karl Towns, the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're 1st in defense and 19th in offense. So you pick Anthony Edwards and Karl Towns as like the offensive guys, but they're not even like a good offensive team.
Yeah.
So they're calling card as defense. So why wouldn't you put the defensive player of the year in the All-Star game? That's kind of weird to me. Maybe it's also he wouldn't maybe have
Yeah.
a very entertaining All-Star game performance,
Yeah.
but like that's ridiculous.
I literally think that's what it has to be because like that was the big thing on Twitter all week too. Like mainly like Timberwolves Twitter. Like I saw that got brought up a bunch, but that's literally got to be it. Because if you are gonna say like if we're gonna focus on individual success and why your team is winning, then yes, Rudy Gobert should be in over Karl Anthony Towns. But
Oh yeah.
Cat Cat is having a great season on top of that, and I think you know it's tough, but I see the argument. I see why Cat was elected and not Rudy. But all in all, I do think Rudy was snubbed. I just didn't mention him just because who wants to see Rudy Gobert throw up layups and block people in an All-Star game when you could have Karl Anthony Towns pulling up from half court.
People
So
just don't appreciate defense anymore. It's sad.
they don't,
And
man.
it's gonna be weird to see him win Defensive Player of the Year and not make the All Star team. That doesn't happen super often, I don't think.
Yeah, I
Um,
don't know.
all right, so uh, moving on, the two teams that we covered this week, the Grizzlies and the Rockets, actually made the only trade of this week. It was Victor Oladipo, a 2024 second, and two 2025 seconds for Steven Adams. Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
So I definitely don't think it's a bad trade for either sides. Victor Oladipo, obviously young, electric player, definitely aging, had multiple knee issues, but when healthy is a good player, definitely a good role player. Um, 3 seconds, I think is definitely good value. Whether you want to use that in trade assets or maybe you hit on a mid late second round,
Yeah.
you never know. But Steven Adams to the Rockets, I definitely think that's just a tough one. I don't really know how he would fit in Houston necessarily. So maybe sign and trade or a buyout. I mean, I don't really know. Yeah, I don't not really moved by this trade, but I I think the Grizzlies probably won this trade to be honest, value wise.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with you value wise. Obviously, Houston gets the better player for now.
Yeah.
And looking at it doesn't the trade did not report where exactly the picks are from, but just looking at the draft capital that Houston has, it's pretty just kind of middle of the second round probably. So you're looking at like somewhere between the 40 and 50th pick uh, in the draft. So nothing that really moves you. They're all second rounders. So yeah, some trade assets and second rounders are becoming kind of more popular as trade assets. Teams used to hold on to them a lot more, but now teams are just kind of shipping them. But you still have to draft a player eventually. One team does.
Right.
But so my takeaways are like Steven Adams coming off the bench probably for Şengün. If he starts with him, that's going to be ridiculous because neither Şengün nor Steven Adams can really shoot at all, and that's going to
Right.
destroy your spacing. And then also Steven Adams, there's some issues with he might not be the same player as he was before he got injured. Neither of these players going to play probably at all this year. But Steven Adams can be a solid backup, except he's not really going to be starting, not going to be closing, and him on the floor maybe more often with a guy like Fred VanVleet and maybe Şengün not playing so many minutes, so he's able to save himself more for the playoffs if the Rockets do make the playoffs. But this is also a move that could be good for Şengün's development. I'm not really moved by this trade, like you said, and I think it's good for Memphis, especially since in the short term they could uh, maybe look at moving Marcus Smart now because they have Victor Oladipo, who is definitely not even close to as good of a defender as Marcus Smart is, but still a solid plus defender, not super efficient. But he can kind of fill that spot if you trade Marcus Smart to go get another maybe young player to fit with your young core. Marcus Smart is getting older. And yeah, not super excited about this trade either way. But Memphis kind of just did it to get off of that contract as well. They are going to have a little bit more cap space going into next year.
Yeah. Yes. All in all, just something else let's bring up about Memphis too. Like you said, with the whole shipping off Marcus Smart thing too. Victor Oladipo, still a veteran guy. He's still gonna
Mhm.
coach up the young guys, Gigi Jackson, Scottie Pippen Jr., just stuff along that. So you're still gonna get veteran leadership, a good mentor, a guy who's been around the league, knows a lot of people. So I definitely think that's a good addition for Memphis.
Yeah.
And then next up, definitely
No, don't do
some
it. Don't. Oh
definitely
my
some big
gosh.
news. I don't. I personally don't feel any type of way about this, but Joel Embiid
Oh boy.
torn meniscus.
Oof.
Definitely, obviously not excited that a player is hurt. Just gonna get that out of the way. But God, I hate Joel Embiid. So like, he's so good. He's just so good, man. Like that's what I'm starting to realize. I just didn't like Joel because he's so damn good at basketball. But anyways, moving along from that, definitely interesting. Sixers organization was fined $75,000 for that. Sixers did not list Joel Embiid on the injury report before the Nuggets, but scratched was a scratch just minutes before tip off. Yeah, I think we can definitely kiss Joel Embiid's MVP back to back goodbye. What do you think?
Yeah, so this is actually a very, very interesting situation. AM Hoops actually does a very good breakdown of this entire thing. You guys should go watch that video. But just to sum it up, Embiid got kind of injured. He tweaked his knee before this game in Denver, and the Sixers just failed to list him on the injury report. And I think Embiid's kind of thinking on this is he hasn't played in Denver since 2019, and he has legitimately ducked these games over the last couple of years, but he's actually injured now. But he's
Yeah.
like trying to play, he's trying to play. So I think he maybe told the Sixers like, "Hey, I want to try to play. Don't put me on the injury report until until we have to put me on the injury report." So like 15 minutes before the game, the fans have already bought tickets. They think that Embiid's going to play, and then he doesn't. So awful for the fans, awful for the league. I mean, this is a televised game. It's in Rivals Week, so just kind of very selfish, I think, of Embiid in that moment. But unfortunately, he does end up getting injured a couple days later. So when you get ruled out for knee soreness and then you play a couple games later, he really was not supposed to do that. He should have sat that next game. So he heard all of the buzz, like Embiid is ducking Denver again. He's like, okay, I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna play Golden State, and then he tweaks his knee. I think falling like over Jonathan Kuminga, and it turns out I don't think it's confirmed that his meniscus is torn, but it's definitely teared in some kind of way, and it's not going to be good. Whether he's out for a couple weeks, a couple months, could be hopefully not the rest of the year, but yeah, just basically a lost season for Joel Embiid in terms of MVP. And then this also sparked a ton of buzz about the 65 game rule. So the media is now coming after this rule that the NBA instated, the 65 game rule. You have to play to win MVP or get an all defensive team, all NBA team, which is kind of ridiculous because it's kind of the media's fault for clowning Embiid publicly for missing this game when he legitimately should have been on the injury report. So really, just bad stuff happening around the Sixers organization and the media and Embiid's decision making. So this could have been easily avoided if people's egos were not getting involved and if people were not just clowning Embiid for no reason. I think this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree with you. And kind of just while you were bringing that up, I just looked at this briefly. And so what I'm seeing right now is reigning NBA MVP Joel Embiid diagnosed with a meniscus injury in left knee. Timetable is unclear.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that definitely doesn't look good.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't no doctor, but I do know that a meniscus recovery usually is 3 to 6 weeks. So even if it is a bare minimum thing, meniscus is still a serious thing. So definitely a big loss for the Sixers. I think we're gonna see what Tyrese Maxey is really made of. We're gonna see if this All-Star selection is warranted, or we're gonna see if this was maybe, just a product of him playing next to Joel Embiid. I know Maxey had 51 the other night without Joel
Mm-hmm.
Embiid, but I guess we're gonna see how things really turn out, and I guess we're gonna see if Tyrese Maxey could be a number one option. And you know,
I think that's all we got. You got anything else, Matt?
uh, yeah, no, that kind of covers everything that I wanted to cover. So yeah, appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode again. Yeah, starting to pump stuff up. Whoa, starting to pump stuff out more consistently, I should say. Obviously, appreciate you guys' support. Subscribe, comment, like, do all that fun YouTube stuff. Share around, share with your grandma, share with your aunt, share with everybody.
Hmm.
Catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.
Peace out.